Hello again, gamers. Welcome back for another episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be showing you how to grok the Yssaril tribes. I want to give a big thank you to one of my viewers, Scott Dixon, for requesting that I cover the Yssaril tribes in one of my videos of Grokking Twilight Imperium. So Scott Dixon, this episode is for you. So, before I get too into this, I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. There is also a link to my merch store over on Teespring, where you can get cool shirts like this one here that says, "Hey, good looking, come to this dungeon often," as well as other shirts and mugs. And there is a link to my Patreon. If you're in a position to and would like to support the channel, you can head over to my Patreon, link in the description down below. So, the Yssaril tribes. Now, these guys were a tribal peoples that were very stealthy. They are kind of like chameleons. They can change the color of their skin. And after their planet was conquered by the Lazaks, and eventually they were kind of absorbed into the Galactic Society, they became a home to a guild of spies and assassins. After they were able to overthrow their colonizers during the Twilight Wars, they were able to use the technology they had absorbed, plus the power they had gained through their guild of assassins and spies, to form their own military might, and now they are fighting for control of the universe. So the Yssaril tribes are all about being sneaky and stealthy and surprising your enemy with really great use of using action cards. So let's talk about the Yssaril tribes, because the big question you got to ask yourself when you're thinking about playing as the Yssaril tribes is, do you like action cards? Do you like having lots of action cards? And do you like being able to surprise your opponent with the use of multiple action cards, and maybe even stealing some from your opponent to use yourself later? If the answer to those questions is yes, then the Yssaril tribes are gonna be the faction for you. But now let's talk about why. So the first thing I want to talk about with the Yssaril tribes are their faction abilities. They have 3 faction abilities. So the first one is Stall Tactics. Now, Stall Tactics says, action, discard 1 action card from your hand. So at first glance, this doesn't seem like a very good ability. And you might be thinking, well, what's the point there? I mean, you just discard 1 action card, you lose one of the cards you could play. Yeah, but there's uses for it. And I'm going to get into the uses for it a little bit later when I talk about how it chains with some other abilities. Now, the second ability here is Scheming. When you draw 1 or more action cards, draw 1 additional action card, then choose and discard 1 action card from your hand. So this ability is great because it allows you to pick and choose the best action cards for yourself. Now, because you get to discard 1 action card from your hand, it doesn't have to be one of the ones you just drew. You can discard one that you drew last turn or the turn before that. Just so long as you're getting rid of one. You get to draw an extra one, and you get to get rid of the cards you have no intent on using. Of course, the Small Tactics lets you also get rid of ones you don't intend to use. And again, it will chain with some other abilities. Next, we have Crafty. You can have any number of action cards in your hand. Game effects cannot prevent you from using this ability. So there's some laws out there that will limit the size of action cards in everyone's hand. They don't affect you. So this is a smaller ability because it's situational, but it's really cool because you are a faction that really focuses in on action cards and their uses. So being able to stop your opponent from limiting the number of action cards you can have is actually quite important when those particular laws or effects come up. Next, I want to talk about the starting system for the Yssaril tribes. So the Yssaril tribes start with a 2-planet system. They have Reptilian and Shalak. Now, Reptilian is definitely the better of the 2 planets. It has 2 resources and 3 influence. This is a decent amount of influence, but the 2 resources really limits your build capacity, because with the space dock on there, you're only going to have a build capacity of 4. Not very good, a little bit substandard. And then you have Shalak is the smaller planet with a resource of 1 and an influence of 2. So this gives you a total of 3 resources, a build capacity of 4, and 5 influence. So the influence is really good when using the leadership card. You got the ability right out of the gate to get a fair number of counters. But again, your resources are okay and your build capacity is kind of substandard. You're probably going to want to try to find a planet with 3 resources as quickly as possible and build another space dock on it so that you can have a larger amount of build capacity out there. That's really their only Achilles heel with their starting system is the build capacity, and it is easily remedied as long as you're able to get a 3 resource planet in your starting hand of system tiles. Just place that near your starting system and you'll be all right. Next, let's talk about what units the Yssaril tribes start with. So the Yssaril tribes start with 2 carriers, a cruiser, 2 fighters, 5 ground troops, and a PDS and a space dock. So of course you're going to put your space dock on Reptilian. It's really the only choice because Shalak would be a terrible choice to put your space dock on. You're probably also going to put your PDS on Reptilian as well. Now the thing here is 2 carriers and 5 ground troops really make the Yssaril tribes a top tier colonizer because in a single round you are able to colonize a 3 planet system and a 2 planet system. This is fantastic. It's a really, really great starting fleet. Next, let's talk about the 1 starting technology that the Yssaril tribes get. They start with Neural Motivator. It's a green tech, which is going to be very important for the prerequisites of their 2 faction-specific techs, because both of them require you have green techs. And the Neural Motivator says, during the status phase, draw 2 action cards instead of 1. All right, so getting an extra action card during the status phase is great, especially for a faction like the Yssaril tribe. So now understand what this means, that starting in the very first status phase of the first round, you're going to get to draw an extra action card because of Neural Motivator, followed by another extra action card because of their faction ability of scheming, and then discard 1. And it's going to be like this every round of the game. So you're going to really be picking and choosing which action cards work best for you at the time, and that's awesome. Next, let's talk about the Agent, Commander, Hero, and Mech, because they're great and it's time to talk about them. So first I want to talk about the Agent. So the Agent is Yssaril. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not really sure. It's a really difficult one to pronounce, but its ability is phenomenal. So this card has the text ability of each other player's agent, even if that agent is exhausted. I have to say that this is quite possibly the best agent in the game. I want to say that again. The agent for the Yssaril tribes is the best agent in the game. Now, understand what this means. You have printed on here the abilities of every other agent in play, which means the bigger the game, the better this agent is. The more players there are, the more options you have for using this agent. The vast majority of agents, of course, exhaust to do their ability, so you're only going to get to pick 1 and do it, but you can pick the best one each round for your purposes. And the better the agents that are being played by the other players, the better abilities this agent has. And the more players there are, the better this agent is. Really phenomenal. Next, let's talk about their commander. So their commander is So-Ata. Now, So-Ata is unlocked when you have 7 action cards. Now, to start with, of course, you are going to be drawing an extra action card every round. If you hoard them, you can get this pretty quickly. A couple rounds into the game, once you as long as you're not playing them in the early game, and really you're not going to want to play your action cards too quickly. You're going to want to build up a big hand of action cards and play them later when you start getting in contact with the other factions. So this is going to go along with your playstyle anyway. But once you unlock So-Ata, their ability is another player activates a system that contains your units. You may look at that player's action cards, promissory notes, or secret objectives. So the main one of these three options that I think you're going to use most often is their action cards. So when another player goes to attack you, you're going to want to look at their action cards to see, do they have direct hit cards? You know, what's in their hand? What kind of sneaky things are they going to do? On the other hand, you might want to check to see if they're looking to get some secret objectives, if they're getting close to winning, because maybe that'll get them a point if certain things happen. But yeah, this isn't the best commander ever, but it's not bad. It's pretty good, and I do like it. Next, we have the hero, which the hero starts as Kyver Blade and Key, Guild Assassin, and is unlocked when you have scored 3 objectives, just like all of the other heroes in the game. And once they are unlocked, they become Guild of Spies Extortion. They have an ability that says Action. Each other player shows you 1 action card from their hand. For each player, you may either take that card or force that player to discard 3 random action cards from their hand, then purge this card. So now, considering you want to have the biggest stockpile of action cards, the option of being like, yeah, you offered me a good card, I'm going to take it from you, or, you know what, no, you've got a lot of cards and you offered me a rather lousy one I don't want, I'm just going to force you to discard 3 of them. It's not necessarily game winning, but it's pretty decent when combined with how the Yssaril tribes want to have a dominance when it comes to action card control. So it is a fun ability, it is very characterful, and it's going to key into a lot of the other abilities that the Yssaril tribes have. Now, finally, I want to talk about the mech for the Yssaril tribes. Now, the mech has a really great deployability. So the mech is the Black Shade Infiltrator, and it is 2 cost, 6 combat, sustained damage, just like all the other mechs. However, it has this great deployability that says after you use your Stole Tactics faction ability, you may place 1 mech on a planet you control. So now is the time I would like to talk about the first cool combination of effects for Stole Tactics. There is one more. The first cool combination of effects is Stole Tactics combined with the Black Shade Infiltrator. So remember, Stole Tactics just says action. Discard 1 card from your hand. That's all it does. Now this helps you to stall and buy some time. But in addition, every time you do it, you get to play a Black Shade Infiltrator somewhere on the board for free on any planet you control. This is fantastic. So you're like, Stole Tactics, I'm going to discard this card and oh look, I get a free mech. And here's where he goes. And then you do it again next round. You can keep doing it until everybody is passed. And that's really awesome. So yeah, so that is the first reason why Stole Tactics is better than it looks at first. There is another one, and we're going to get to it in a moment. So the next thing I want to talk about is the faction-specific technologies. So the first of the 2 faction-specific technologies is Transparent Steel Plating. Now the Transparent Steel Plating requires you to have 1 green tech already out, which you start with because you have the Neural Motivator. So this can be played the first time you use one of the abilities from the technology strategy card. So it says, during your turn of the action phase, players that have passed cannot play action cards. So here we have the second reason why Stole Tactics is awesome. Because you can, when you're planning to do a very important invasion, like, say, attacking Mechatol Rex and taking it from someone, or taking a legendary planet, you can Stole Tactics, getting free mechs thrown out, maybe getting mechs thrown out in an area where you're staging and getting ready to invade Mechatol Rex. And then, once your opponents have all passed, you invade, and they can't play any action cards on you. No direct hits, no sneaky abilities, no crazy stuff that they're going to do to help stop you from taking that planet. Whereas you can play all the action cards you like. And yeah, this is actually a really cool ability when combined with Stole Tactics. Now, the second of their 2 faction-specific techs is going to take you a little longer to get out because it requires you to have 3 green techs. So with the Neural Motivator and the Transparent Steel Plating, you have 2 possible green techs. If you get a green technology specialty planet, you can get this out pretty quick. Otherwise, you're going to have to get at least 1 other green tech in order to get this out. Now, the technology is called the Magion Implant, and it has the ability Action. Exhaust this card, look at another player's hand of action cards, choose one of those cards, and add it to your hand. So this is a great ability because it allows you to see what action cards your opponent has and then steal one. So you can look at them, you can be like, oh, well, this is your best card. I'm going to take that from you because I don't want you using it against me in the coming battle that looks like you're about to invade me. Or, you know what, this one is really great and I want to use it. yeah, this is a phenomenal card. It is really, really good and definitely worth getting. So now next I'd like to talk about what technologies I recommend for the Yssaril tribes. So first I'm going to go with green, since obviously the Yssaril tribes are very focused on green technologies. Now in order to get the Magion implants, again I said you may need to have one other green tech. However, if you get a green technology specialty, you could skip this one. But if you can't skip this one, if you need to get another green tech, the one I would recommend going for is hypermetabolism. During the status phase, gain an extra command token. This is great. This is a really great tech. It doesn't necessarily lean into any of the abilities of the Yssaril tribes, but it is a great tech, and getting extra command tokens will mean that you don't as often have to grab leadership. Though, actually, when they grab leadership, since they start with a lot of influence, it's actually quite good for the Yssaril tribes. But you could just wait and do the secondary ability on leadership if you have this, and it probably wouldn't be so bad. So yeah, hypermetabolism if you can't get a green technology specialty. Now, also, the other green tech I want to recommend, because you're going to have the prerequisites for it, and it's awesome, is the level 3 green tech, the X89 Bacterial Weapon, which says action. Exhaust this card and choose one planet in a system that contains one or more of your ships that have bombardment. Destroy all infantry on that planet. So this is another great way to sneak in and wipe out everybody on Mechatol Rex or a legendary planet and steal it from its owner, especially if you've waited till they can't even play any action cards to try to stop you, because there are lots of tricksy ability on the action cards, and you want to be the only one who gets to use them. So yeah, X89 Bacterial Weapon, since you're going to already have the prerequisites for it, you might as well go for it. Now, I want to give a few recommendations for for some other color technologies. So I have one red and one yellow I'm going to recommend. Now, I'm not recommending too many because I really feel like you're going to want to focus on the greens, but these, to help you get some of the prerequisites towards getting certain unit upgrades, you may want to get these. So for yellow, I have Scanlink Drone Network. When you activate a system, you may explore one planet in that system that contains one or more of your units. So getting to explore planets you've already colonized is great because you'll get more relic fragments. Relic fragments have awesome abilities, and they fit in with the sneaky nature of the Yssaril tribes, getting lots of cool extra abilities, similar to those that you have on action cards. Also, the level 0 red tech AI development algorithm says when you research a unit upgrade technology, you may exhaust this card to ignore any one prerequisite. That is a really great ability for them because, again, they're not going to have a lot of the prerequisites unless they get a lot of technology specialties on planets. On colors other than green, because generally speaking they're going to focus in on the green text. And then as the secondary ability, it says when one or more of your units use production, you may exhaust this card to reduce the combined cost of the produced units by the number of unit upgrade technologies that you own. So both of these abilities are really decent for the Yssaril tribes. And then I want to make a special note of the only unit upgrade tech that you can get with just green text, because to start with, you're just going to have a lot of green text, and that is the Infantry Mark II, because the Infantry Mark II requires 2 green technologies. So once you get the Infantry Mark II, it goes from a combat of an 8 to a 7. It's still, of course, 1 cost for 2 units, and it says after the 2 unit is destroyed, roll 1 die. If the result is 6 or greater, place the unit on this card. At the start of your next turn, place each unit that is on this card on a planet you control in your home system. So getting to get your infantry back is really, really awesome. And in addition, this will help you with if you get the AI development algorithm, to already have one particular unit upgrade towards its second ability. And then its primary ability will, of course, help you get some of the other unit upgrades if you're looking to upgrade some of your ships. Now, there are tons of other technology upgrades that will work really well for the Yssaril tribes, but none of the others really work specifically well for them. There are plenty of others that you could get that just work well for everybody, but these are the ones that I do recommend going for. So now I believe it is time to talk about the strategy cards. So now their number one strategy card that they're going to want to go for early game, in my opinion, is Warfare. But this is tough because it is a high desire card for everybody. The thing about Warfare is everybody wants it because everybody wants to colonize more, but being a top tier colonizer, getting to colonize an extra system of any size between you and Mechatol Rex is going to be very, very useful. So if you're able to get Warfare, I do recommend grabbing it first. Now, another strategy card I'm going to recommend for possible early game play, either in the first or second turn, either when you're not able to get Warfare on, as a possible place to play to help you speed up in getting your commander, is the Politics card. Now, this is going to be an easy one to get because nobody really goes for Politics early game, generally speaking. There are exceptions. But the reason is the second ability on the card is to draw 2 action cards. So remember, when you draw 2 action cards, you actually draw a third and then you discard one because of your faction abilities. But it also helps you to build up your supply of action cards in your hand faster to get Ata out quicker. So this is another really useful one to get early game. Now, the final of the 3 strategy cards I think are really good for early game, of course, is technology, because there's some great technologies that you'll want to get out. This isn't as high of importance as either Warfare or getting those extra action cards, mind you, because while your faction-specific techs are really great, they aren't end-all be-all. You're more about those action cards, in my opinion. But in the first couple of rounds, grabbing technology, especially if you can't get Warfare in either of the first 2 rounds, would also be great. So technology, politics, and Warfare. And then, of course, later, on occasion, trade is going to be good. They can get 3 commodities, and doing trades with other people is great. Also, construction is going to be important. Once you get a 3 resource planets, you can get another space dock out there. It can be very important. When you think your opponents might want to attack you, diplomacy can be really tricksy to stop them from attacking you. If you're running out of counters on occasion, the primary or secondary ability of leadership is going to be good for you. You'll be able to get a lot of counters at once because you do start with a good amount of influence at 5 influence. And of course, Imperial to get yourself more secret objective cards, as well as to score public objectives when you use the primary ability on the Imperial card. So, so all of them are going to have their place and their time when you're going to be using them. But I do think the big ones you're going to want to look for early game are going to be Warfare, Politics, and Technology. Maybe a little bit followed by Construction, because again, you may want to get another planet as quickly as possible that has a higher amount of capacity for building than your starting system. Finally, let's talk about what secret objectives you should be looking for when you use the secondary ability on the Imperial card, the one that lets you draw this another secret objective. Which are the really good ones that you're going to want? Which ones are going to work really well for the Yssaril tribes? They actually have a really good number that'll work really well for them. Let's go over them. So the first one is form a spy network. Boy, does this was totally intended to work for them. Discard 5 action cards. Yeah, so once you unlock your commander, if you have gotten this card, you can just, do it and get the ability, and it's great. Granted, it will then reduce your huge supply of action cards, but getting the victory point, of course, if it's going to mean winning the game, could be very worth it. Next, we have adapt new strategies, own 2 faction technologies. Now, both of your faction technologies require green techs. You start with a green tech. This is going to be very achievable during the game. In fact, you're probably going to get it fairly early game. Only a few rounds in my opinion. Next, we have Unveil Flagship. Win a space combat in a system that contains your flagship. You cannot score this objective if your flagship is destroyed in the combat. Now, I want to do a little aside here because I forgot earlier to talk about their flagship. So the flagship for the Yssaril tribes is actually really great. It is the Yssaril. Now, this ship is an 8 cost, 2 attacks at 5, which makes it equal in offensive capabilities to 2 dreadnoughts. That is really good. Move of 2, which makes it very fast for a flagship. Capacity of 3, sustained damage. And then it has the ability that says this ship can move through systems that contain other players' ships. So it can move faster and it can sneak through systems to attack isolated fleets that it can beat up on. This is a really great flagship. A pretty decent combat capability of the 2 attacks at 5. So this will happen, especially if you're able to do it in an area where you're able to back it up with some other fairly decent ships like some dreadnoughts and such. You should have a pretty good advantage at taking out those enemy fleets. Next, we have Fuel the War Machine. Have 3 space docks on the game board. Now, I already said you're going to want to get a second space dock out pretty quickly. If you have drawn this one, just take construction again. Get another space dock out there. It's no big deal, and very achievable. Next, we have Establish a Hegemony. Control planets that have a combined influence value of at least 12. So here's the thing. You start with influence of 5. Mechatol Rex has influence of 6. If you take Mechatol Rex and any planet that has at least 1 influence, you're gonna get established hegemony. Not hard at all. Next, we have mechanized military. Have 1 mech on each of 4 planets. Again, you have that great ability on the Black Shade Infiltrator. Deploy. After you use your Stole Tactics faction ability, you may place 1 mech on a planet you control. This can be done on a whim. This is very easy to do as long as you have enough cards to use that ability a handful of times in a particular turn. Next, we have Prove Endurance. Be the last player to pass during a game round. So again, you can save up a bunch of action cards and use the stall action repeatedly. Very, very easy to do with the Yssaril tribes. Next, we have Destroy Their Greatest Ship. Destroy another player's War Sun or Flagship. So again, the Yssaril tribes are going to be a faction that can really look for those direct hit cards. So when they try to use their sustained damage, when you're hitting them with your biggest fleet, you can wipe these out. And this is a very achievable secret objective. And finally, Master the Laws of Physics. Own 4 faction technologies of the same color. So here's the thing. Along with the 1 green tech that you start with, I recommended 5 total green technologies, including the green tech that you start with. So yeah, that's totally achievable and really easy to do. So yeah, there's quite a few that work really well for them. So yeah, the Yssaril tribes are sneaky and tricksy and all about those action cards. They have possibly the greatest agent in the game. I say possibly, it's the greatest agent in the game. This agent is phenomenal. The better the agents are that your opponents are using, the better he is. The more players there are, the better he is. Really, really fantastic agent. Their abilities are really good and really lean into the whole gaining lots of faction card abilities. You may not have the best fleets in the galaxy, but you're going to use, normal, unupgraded ships often to beat super fleets with your tricksy action card abilities, as well as your abilities to stall, get lots of mechs to help invade, and then when you fight your opponent, because they've already passed, they're not able to play any of their action cards to stop you. Yeah, the Yssaril tribes are a lot of fun. These guys are really cool. They're not super complicated, but they're not like a super beginner faction either. They're kind of like one to play after maybe you've played once, maybe like a second faction to try out. But yeah, they're really, really cool. If you play them right, you could have a darn good chance at winning in a game of Twilight Imperium, especially with the addition of the agent commander and hero abilities, because again, their agent is phenomenal. I love the agent for the Yssaril tribes. It really made these guys a contender for being a very, very top tier faction. So there you have it. If I missed anything that you'd like to tell me, comment down below. And let me know, when you're playing the Yssaril tribes, which faction do you love to see across the table from you because of how awesome it is with their agent, because of getting their agent's ability on your agent. And if you enjoyed this episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium, you'd like to see me do more Grokking videos like this, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on. Hi, Nico. Hi. I'm recording again, so you gotta do puppy bloopers, right? Is that right? Gotta get it out of your system? Yeah? Okay. Go play with your toys. Oh, another puppy blooper? What you doing? What's going on? Oh, so crazy. Okay, come here. I'll give you scritchies. Lots of scritchies. Okay, but now you gotta go play with your toys, okay? You go play with your toys.